This is going to be a different ISSA, International Scissor Sharpeners Association, shear evaluation than any I've done, because for two reasons. Number one is I'm going to maybe explain more verbally about what I'm seeing and what's going on. Visual too, and because the person that sharpened these shears is someone that I've trained, but I know that he is visually impaired. And so I'm kind of curious, it's been a few months since he had his training. And I always advise people to do this evaluation. If they can, wait after they've been sharpening a little while, if they've been trained, and see, because sometimes you forget. Sometimes you could pass like right after the training, but after you've been sharpening a little while. And then vice versa. Sometimes you can do better after a little experience. But I'm digressing. I'm going to look at these shears and really explain to you very carefully what I'm seeing and what might need to be changed. And so let's get right to it. Now, the person, that, as I said, that sharpened these, he's visually impaired, but his it has to do with a brain injury, not with his actual eyesight. So he can see light and dark. He can see the red Sharpie marks. He can see enough to sharpen. It's the interpretation, in his brain. With that being said, let's take a look at it. And I'm going to evaluate these like I would any other person's shears. And most of the people, well, pretty much everybody that comes in, if I don't know them personally, at least I know their name, know where they came from. And so it's a very subjective evaluation. It's not like some of the other organizations that have a very, double blind evaluation. So, I might have a little prejudice to somebody who's out of the country, or somebody that that's visually impaired. But I'm trying to be fair, because you need to know if there's some things that need to be improved. And that's important for everybody, regardless of what handicap they may have. And so the first thing I do, and here's the two shears. I don't do any adjusting of the screw, but I'll cut dry tissue. Now, I've talked about this before. This is the cheap see-through toilet tissue. I buy it Dollar Tree. It's not what I would use in the bathroom. It really isn't. Originally, we used puff tissues, and we pulled them apart and used single ply. And pulling them apart is time consuming. This is what I use, but I don't let them see me use this in the hair salon. You could tear these out little individual squares, or I take the cardboard out so they doesn't really look like a roll of toilet paper. But do what you need to do that they don't think you're cutting toilet paper. But this seems to be the most objective way to see if all the burrs and the nicks are gone. So I'm going to hold this up, and I tilt this way because I want to pull my thumb out. Now they have to, if they're real loose, it's hard to do. Now this one's a little bit, I think it's going to be on the loose side. So if it doesn't cut, that may be the problem. See, it's not cutting because it is too loose. For shears with a plastic handle that feel real light, you want to have them tighter. When I cut this, it's basically kind of folding the tissue. The tissue is sliding between the blades. Come in here closer so you can see. It's sliding between the blades. Let's see. I don't think it'll cut wet at all. No, not, it tears it a little bit. Let's see if this one cuts hair. That cuts hair. So if you were to sharpen these and give this to the stylist, they would be perfectly fine with these. The hair is the most important part of it. Is if it cuts hair, your customer will be happy. I just think these could have been done better. Two things I'm seeing. I'm going to go ahead and tighten these for the fun of it and see if they cut my tissue, if they're the screws tighter. I'm making a T out of it, and when I drop it, it drops about halfway between closed and open, which is the correct adjustment for most shears. But for this one, any of them with a light handle, it needs to be all the way out. It needs to be tighter. Same thing for like the Firefly or any of these really light shears that have a very small blade or a light handle. I'm going to adjust the screw, and if I think of it as a clock, I'm going to turn it about 5 minutes. And it moves a little bit, but it doesn't fall down as far. I want this actually a little bit tighter, so I'm going to turn it like a 5 minutes. Now it stays all the way up. Let's see if that would cut. Not perfect. Pulling my thumb out. Not perfect on the wet. You know what? It cuts, if I don't put the shear all the way in. No, it's not cutting there. So this one did not pass. Let me take a look at it. I don't have my Magni wand today, but I've got a magnifying glass. See if I can see what's going on here. Not feeling any nicks. I'm going to see if there's a little burr left on the outside. I'm going to try my nail buffer. So this is my nail buffer, and I'm just going to go over that blade again. No, it's not. If I use a little extra pressure here, maybe I need to make that screw a tad tighter. Another 5 minutes. So where that screw was here, I've turned it to there. About 15-minute turn. Let's see if that fixed it. Because it looks good. That's it. That's it. Loose screw. Perfect. Perfect. See that? Even the wet. So the only problem with this was the screw was loose. And that is just maybe not having enough knowledge about these little lightweight shears. So let's look at the other ones. Now these are adjusted tight. You see that? Let's see how these cut. This is the convex edge. So let's try them dry. Back in the back pivot area, it didn't cut as nicely as at the tip. Let's see how they cut wet. Wet tissue. I've got my shear here, closing it, and it's a little rough. Do you see that in here? It's cutting, but that back area is a little rough. Okay, I think I see what's wrong, and we'll go over that in a minute. Let's see how it cuts hair though. So I've got some hair up here. It pushes. It cuts. But it does a little bit of a pushing. Do you see that? More so than I would like. It's kind of pushing at the tip. And I know it's adjusted tight. So let's see if we can figure out why these aren't cutting as good as they should. So what I'm looking at, the inside of the blade. The inside of the blade, the rod line looks good it looks consistent. It's along the cutting edge. It's not along the back. I don't see anything wrong with the ride line. What I see is the outside. I see some differences here. Number one, I think he was so afraid of taking the name off of it, he didn't get a good convex shape. And right along the edge, if you feel a clamshell, how it curves to nothing, and I know he's able to see the reflection of light and dark. It should be like a uniform. As you turn the shear in the light, you should see like a uniform amount of the light, not like it's dark and then light. And that's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing it looks like a bevel here. And then at the tip, I see like two steps. I see, dark and then light and then another. So it's like three different angles. And turning it back and forth in the light, you can see like the three angles here at the tip. It also looks like this is the blade he had problems with, the front blade. It looks also like, and let me see if I can describe it, that back about 3 millimeters, 4 millimeters from the tip, it's as if it was, when it was brought across to sharpen, it was lifted up, so that more metal was taken off right at the tip than the rest of the blade. So there was a rotation of the hand as it came off, rather than coming across straight. There was a little bit of a curve to take too much off of the tip. That's only on that one blade. And that one blade, it looks like it's not polished well to the tip. It looks rough, the area right going down to the tip. If I run my nail down there, well, I don't feel any nicks. But it feels, I'm trying to see if it feels a difference in the sharpness, and see if there's a way to see how these things feel. I got an idea. If you get a pen, or like we're going to use the Sharpie, you can kind of push along there, and it sort of catches in the plastic as you're pushing. And when I get here, it just slides on across. So I'm at an angle on my plastic, about a 45-degree angle, and I'm kind of biting into the plastic, and you'll feel it catching. But when I get to the tip, it sort of slides. It's not catching as well. And that's where I'm sort of seeing that angle change. Let me see how this one works. Now, I've seen some people do that on their fingernail, but that's not good for your fingernails if you're sharpening a lot of things. So I'm going at a 45-degree angle, and it's catching. Slides a little bit there at that tip too. I'm not really sure. I think if these were given to a hairstylist, they would say, oh yeah, they're okay, they cut hair. Because if you use some pressure on them, they cut hair like they normally do, they'll cut hair. See, and they can point cut and whatnot, but they're not passing. And I'd like to send them back and have him work on them again. And what I'm thinking, whatever he's doing with the rod line, it's right. It's the outside working on the machine where there's a problem. And maybe a little bit more not sure what angle he did them at. Maybe try to do them at a 45-degree angle. Maybe he did a scratch test to see what the angle was on these, and I know these come as a fairly blunt angle. This is one that just passed, and let me see if I can zoom in, and I'm not sure if he's going to be able to see this, but those of you that are watching can, and I'll let you see the difference between these two edges. This one passed. It's got scratches on it. It's not that pretty on the face of the blade. The word of the name of the shear is come off. But when I rotate it to the edge, the way the light hits is uniform. It's not like a demarcation where the angle changes. This one, you can see a white line down there as I turn it. And then this one, you don't. You see the difference in that? So this one is not a really nice convex put on it. When I feel the angle on here, this one feels sharper. I don't know if it's a sharper degree, 45 degrees, or whether this one somehow wasn't polished as much to the edge, or I'm not really sure, but I can see grind marks along the edge on here, and that's going to, in most cases, it keeps the hair from pushing, but I think it's just not sharp enough to bite into the hair. This one did not push the hair. Let's see how this works on the, see if I'm got this on the plastic and I'm pulling it down. See, it catches all the way. I can feel it catching on this plastic. And this is something, if you can't really see it, you can feel. See, this is when I use that same pressure from this one to this one. This one wants to, it's not catching in this plastic. So it's just not as sharp of an edge. So the adjustment's the same. So the difference in the one that passed from another gentleman and then this one that didn't is in the outside edge. Actually, his ride line is prettier than the ride line on this one that passed. It's close. It's close. So I suggest that he works on these a little bit more and tests them on the wet tissue and on the hair, and he's almost there. Almost there. So don't be discouraged if you don't pass the ISSA. If it, it's cutting hair and your customers are going to be reasonably happy with it. I think there's another step to go. Handicapped or not, probably, I haven't done the statistics on it, but about half the people that send me these certifications don't pass. And of those, most of them are out there and have a fairly successful business. So I even though I talk about this being a minimum level skill, it's still I don't want anyone to be so discouraged by not passing that they don't go out there and make an income, because it's good enough too. An example are my I don't have an example. So it makes me sad when someone doesn't pass. These came close, and this one would have passed if the screw had been tighter. So, and if this one had passed fine, I would have just said they were okay. But I think, work on both of them. And as I said, about half the people that do this certification, they don't pass, but there's usually just some little tweaking in there. And his inside work is fine. He needs to work on the outside of the edge. But the beveled edge was fine. And I think that's where he is. That's what he's going to see a lot of right now, is the beveled edges. And if you're a groomer, if you're sharpening for groomers, most of what you're going to see are beveled edges anyway. So good luck on your next certification, and I'll be glad to send these back to you. you for my Christmas ornament you sent me. Thank you. I love it. You know I collect Christmas ornaments, and to have one from your state was just awesome. They'll go on my tree every year. Thank you.